Hey everybody, it's Marty the JavaScript Party and my buddy Rhett. Hey Rhett, hi there. And we are working on the ThreeJS project, and we're making really good. This is really good progress. I think this is the coolest this thing has looked since we started it. Yeah, I did have my paralegal course last night. I'm learning about bankruptcy. It's my first course. It was very interesting. There was probably about 60 people in the course. I think there was like 56 online and then four in the actual classroom. And then the teacher was in the professor was in the classroom. And she was a lawyer. She was like a sub, but she did a really good job for the most part. She had a lot of examples. One thing I would definitely one major observation I would make about bankruptcy in general is that it is extraordinarily tilted against the consumer, and very, very tilted against the creditor, for the creditor. And the I guess the way I would put it is, if you just looked at the laws just on the face of them, it still to me looks very tilted towards the creditor, which maybe it should be, but the thing is then on top of that, I think that not only are the laws tilted towards the creditor, but they are not enforced on the creditor side. So like the attorney who was teaching us was like, it is against the law for them to call you at work, and then would give gave a couple stories of people getting called at work. And then it's against the law for them to do this. And another thing is like we had a nice mix of people. We had people kind of like me who were from other industries. We had people that were already working in the industry. We had people who had worked in the industry for decades, and then we're just trying to refresh things like that. We had all different things, but there was a group of like people who worked for collectors. That was why they're there, is to get. And they were you. I was watching them on the camera because I've been doing these sort of camera sort of meetings for a decade now. So, I've gotten to where I really watch for people's facial expressions and stuff like that. And they every time they would find out that something that was illegal to do, you could just see it hit them like, oh my god, I do that every day. And I think that now they're aware that what they're doing is illegal, and they may slow down for a day, but I think it'll be eventually get to them. It'll become clear to them that they are actually above the law, that the law does not apply to them. So like the laws are heavily applied to the consumer, and the laws are totally tilted against the consumer and for the collectors. And on top of that, the laws on the consumer side, like in my lifetime, I've seen hundreds of people getting um, facing the consequences of not paying their debts. Maybe all their stuff's out on the street, or just all kinds. Their car getting towed away, just all kinds of stuff, right? Like I've seen the consequences of people not paying their debt my whole life. I've never seen a a collector face any consequences, or even heard of a collector facing any consequences for breaking the law. So, like, I would love to see. I think it would make a big difference if one day we were scrolling through TikTok or watching TV or something, and then you saw a bill collector in handcuffs walking towards a police car because he or she was breaking the law in bill collecting, while they were bill collecting. But no, they don't get in any trouble at all. They may there may be some pressure put on them, but there's zero consequences for them breaking the law. But there's tons of consequences for the on the collector side. I mean, on the consumer side. So, anyways, yeah, that's something I think we need to work on as a society, because I do think that our whole system is starting to become like sludge. Like when you if you go to the store and you pay $100 for something, $85 of that is just in debt. Is just in paying for debt. and then only 15% of it is productive use of that money. And I think that number is just creeping up, and it's just going to get us to the point where like the whole system just locks down because the only thing anybody all money is just going towards debt, and none of it is going towards actual productive work. I think that is something our policymakers really need to put some thought into, because we've definitely gone way too far on the. And then I think that like people in college, the 18-year-olds going to college, are probably the most vulnerable adults, and student loans are absolutely predatory. I yeah, you know. Anyways, so let's talk about code. So right now I have like sort of your classic assignment, like, oh, I have four assignments, I have four things, and this is just that classic time that where you're going to learn where it makes sense to move from a four separate assignments to an array. But once you move to array, there's new challenges that come with that. But so the first thing I want to do is I know that um, I have I have two things here. I have st renderer IDs and st renderers. Um, Now I believe that in the template we use the ID, right? Yeah, we have the ID, so that's all we need in there. Um, and then I think down here we add things to the renderers themselves. So I think what we can do is just have an array of IDs. So that's an array of numbers. And then I don't think we even need to get this until we're doing this hack down here. Right, so it is kind of funny because I do this ST visualization here, and I think I only do it to the first one, and it's because I'm not using this, but I do intend to use it one day. So I think let's do this. So let's create an array of numbers. So st render IDs colon, and we're just going to say that's a number, and it's an array of numbers, so that's what that little thing does, and then we're going to say that is it. And then every time we get a renderer, we're just going to get the ID. I like the way this is kind of playing out. Now I don't know if I can st. IDs. See, I can't do anything to it in here, so I'm going to have to do it in the constructor. So I think what I want to do is move all this code into the constructor. Move it out of here, move it over here. And then I'm going to need to do this. So basically we have to move it over here. So the first step is just to sort of get it to work. The end goal is to get all these things into an array. But unfortunately we have to. And I'm assuming this is going to break as soon as. And then. This is the code that does nothing. I would never check something like this in. Every time I ever check something in this, it is always been shot down. And, that's one of those things where you kind of have to be like, oh, maybe I'm wrong here because like I've literally been shot down by every level for that, at the top, very, very tops to the very, very bottoms. So this probably won't work in the template because the template wants to have access to this actual values. And this actually ends up being a really good, right? So it breaks, and that's because over here in the template, I'm trying to access the IDs directly, and I don't have access to the IDs. So what I want to do is come back and refactor this as for this array. So I want to populate this array with the ID, and I don't even know. Well, let's just step by step. Oh, let's go ahead and fix this. I remember when my daughter was very, very young, I tried to teach her like coding, and she did. She came along. Well, I was teaching her Visual Basic. She came along really well until we hit the concept of arrays, and then she was out. I'm out. She's actually pretty good at coding now, but she doesn't work as a coder. Um, but she understands it, and it has really benefited her. All right, so now all of this, we don't have any problems. The TypeScript is good, but it doesn't. The template doesn't know where the ID is. So what we want to do is we want to push this ID. So we're gonna do st render or this. So, of course. Stop. Push. And then st render ID. Two. Arrow 3. And 4. So that is good. Now, I don't think... So now we have those in there. So what I can do is I can change this. And this isn't like... So we're only going to do this if there's anything in there. And then we want... And this is obviously not... Like we're sort of just slowly migrating towards moving into a... into sort of properly using this array. So basically I'm saying go ahead and give the first one in the list to be used, the second one, and it is kind of funny because the 0th one is the first one. So this is always one of the real stepping stones to, sort of being able to kind of shift your mindset from, 0 is 1, 1 is 0, that kind of thing, being able to have it in your brain where it's no longer rigid, where 0 is 0, 1 is 1. But now, okay, in this context, 0 is equal to 1, right? 0 is equal to first. 0, is like kind of one of those things that makes it hard. Okay, so now we're working again, okay? But obviously we've got sort of a Frankenstein thing going on. We've got a list, but then we also have that. So now, I think one of the things is we really don't need, at this point, we really don't need that to be like that, right? We can change this and we can just say get the render ID. Now, I have to admit that when I come back and I'm looking at code, I really prefer the way it was. the way I have it at the moment over the way I'm changing it to. But you end up with a lot of extra code that way. Um, but so now this is st render IDs 0, right? So we pushed it into the first thing, and now we're getting it out of the first index of this list, right? So we don't, yeah, so that, and then we can literally just do this. So the benefit of this is that, like, this is the same code, right, in both cases, so we don't really have to manage what number we are. And so, but instead of the 0th one, which is the 0 index, which is the first value in the list, we want the first one, which is the 2nd. Yeah, no, it's kind of a bummer how that works. And then I screwed that up. That wasn't right. Okay, so what we want is this. I don't know why I did that. Yeah, that was weird. What I just did was weird. And then this is number 2. But what did I do? What have I done? Oh. Okay, what did I do that time? Okay. There we go. Yeah, that's crazy, huh, Rhett? That was crazy, wasn't it? And when this is all said and done, what will happen is we'll have a sort of code that we can just iterate over instead of having this sort of, everything being individually. So it's like reusable, redoable. I don't know what the right word is, but it's like code that we can iterate over, and so we don't have as many lines of code to maintain. It's more scalable. It's easier just to add a 5th one. But again, we are still in sort of a Frankenstein mode, right? So, and the only reason we even need this stuff is because because we don't have animations in a sort of reusable way. So it's kind of funny. Oh, okay. Yeah. So now here we are. Oh, so something is really weird about the 3rd one, right? And I don't really understand, because you notice, like, this has gotten an, oh, yeah, so we did something weird with, I think the 4th one is supposed to be doing what the 3rd one's doing, and the 3rd one's only supposed to be rotating like this. So what did we do? 3, 4, get base renderer. And 4. So 4, we added all of these, but for some reason it ended up getting added to the 3rd one. So I must not have iterated on this one. I must have made that 3. So now one thing we can do to make this a little bit like, the next thing we can do is we could say to make this absolutely consistent, we can make this dot length -1. So it's 1 long. We subtract 1 from it. It'll be the 0th one. Maybe not. And let's see what we have in the console. There's probably something useful in the console. App line 53, it's saying can't read property of undefined. And on 53. So it's saying that that is undefined, so I don't know why. Oh, because okay. Sorry. It's supposed to be like this. So that's just the index of it, but that wasn't the actual ID. And I'm actually kind of lucky because it would have been very easy for that to have been to, like if the IDs weren't skipping and stuff, that may have actually worked as a false positive. But basically, we want the 1 at 0 minus 1, not. And this is pretty much what coding was like originally. Like you would just spend all your time on this. So anyone who was coding like back in 96, 97, 98 spent all day long doing stuff like this with these dealing with arrays and stuff like that. So it just kind of becomes second nature. And it just only comes, it comes with practice. You just have to practice. This is just very low level stuff. But basically now that code is, the goal is for all the code to be very similar. All right, so now we can change this down here instead of using this st renderer one. Let's see what is our time. 22 minutes. It's only 8:10. I got 50 minutes before work. God, I love coding. It's just so crazy because like I got all deep into that sort of. I've been thinking, all morning and everything about how sort of unfair the whole creditor, the whole legal system around the bankruptcy code and creditors versus all that. And then like you just get into this and you just get a refresh. The clipboard gets cleared, and that is really nice. And this is why, even if you can't make a living coding, it makes a lot of sense to code. So basically, we want the renderer for the very first renderer in the ID. So I would rather this code right here to be down there. But so, and we could have, except for when I had it 0, 1, 2, when I had hard coded the numbers. So I think what we want to do is sort of just for loop over our IDs. So basically we have our, and then just add like a little bit of logic in there of which one of these to add based on which number we're on. So if ID is equal to 0, do this. If ID is equal to 1, do that. But we're going to do this. We're going to say st or this dot st render IDs dot for each. And so you pass in a function, and it'll do this for each one of them, and then it actually creates an argument, and it's going to give you a number. So it's going to be st render ID, and that is a number. And then we are going to get our renderer, st renderer, which is an st renderer. And this is equal to this dot st renderer service dot get renderer by ID and we know what the ID is because we pass it in the for loop, strender. Okay, so that's our renderer. Now, we can also have a second argument. You just have to remember this. It's just, I don't really like it because it's not obvious, but which is the index in the array, which is also a number. Okay, and we're just going to say if index is equal to 0. And it's so funny because I remember when triple equals came out, because there used to only be double equals. When triple equals came out, like everybody loved triple equals, and people still do in general. But like literally in my entire career, only one time have I ever seen moving something from where triple equals saved us. But I have seen double equals making something triple equals break or cause a lot more code so many times. But anyway, so we want to do this to the renderer if it's the first one, if it's the 0th index. All right, so I'm going to move this in here. And then instead of strender01, I'm going to make this strender. And basically, it's going to do that. It's looping over each one of them, and if it happens to be the first one, it's going to do this. Now, everything should still work. Fingers crossed. Yep, everything still works. So now we don't need this up here anymore. And I'm just going to comment this out because it's not doing anything at all. It's just there so I don't forget to do it. Basically, I want be able to set the width and height, and actually the left and the right and all kinds of stuff. So basically, we need to build out this whole architecture for the whole renderer. So you know that's coming. That's on the horizon. So we're saying if index is equal to 0, this is absolutely not ideal, but you know. And then, yeah, so value 0. So we don't even need this one. So let's go ahead and get rid of this second animation. And let's see. No, we still have 44 minutes, right? I'm not quite ready. So that's nice. And it would be nice if this was just a push. Like something that I just pass the mesh to it and this information or something like that. Or maybe this whole animation, ST animation. Yeah. And but basically we need to add more functionality to the animation service in order to take care of that. And now we can say else. Now, could I have skipped all these steps and gone straight to an array and all that? I don't know, probably. But it would have been like more lines of code that I would have had to write before I had working stuff to make sure that everything that I haven't made any small mistakes along the way. And as you've seen, I've made a lot of small mistakes along the way that I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, no, this needs to be changed, oh, that needs to be changed. Trying to build out the whole thing working and then go back and fix all the small mistakes, which I've seen a lot of people do, is extraordinarily stressful. B, a lot of times you end up with code that just doesn't really do anything in there because you're like just kind of fixing things and trying things and all that. And it's just sort of like a panicked coding style, which I don't really like doing. So if it's the first index, then it's this guy. So then it is the second one, and we're not doing anything with that first animation. We're only using the second animation, so. And then. And I have, like, I can't even tell you how many times I have been like, okay, guys, yeah, it's going to take me 3 weeks to do something because I know I'm going to be doing it like this. And then another developer will be like, oh, I'll have that done in 2 days. And then, like, 3 weeks later, I'm done. Maybe even 2 weeks later, I'm done. And they're still, um, uh, so I've done, they're still, you know, just trying to get things working. And it's like, and I'm all done. Um, and no one, and then it's just kind of like, yeah, I said it was going to take me 3 weeks, and it took me 3 weeks. He said it was going to take him 2 days, and it took him, and he's still not done. And then maybe even months later, they're still not done. They're still working away, explaining why, giving great reasons on why the stuff's not done, but it's not done. And so, and this one I think did all three. Um, basically, we'll just copy that whole thing up here, and then we'll get rid of the 04. Okay, so then we do not need these anymore because they're not being used. They're not referenced. So you notice they're like dimmed out because they're not even being referenced. Um, some people would call this cleaner code. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good word. Um, it's definitely not as. It's a lot smaller. So, you know, like it's easy to see, hey, we're pushing these renders. Um, unfortunately, for some reason, the fourth one isn't doing anything. And that's because I did not change the index. 3. There we go. So basically we've moved everything into arrays. We still have some, like now this stands out like a sore thumb, which I think is a good thing, that this stands out like a sore thumb. Um, it just isn't. Um, it's just like different. It just stands out because it's different. Like there's this, and then there's looping, but it's different. So let me see over here. So one thing we can do now is change this into a for loop, which then kind of has this. It's not going to do anything if the length is broken, but then we still have a little bit of weirdness here. Um, so maybe it's like something we can, like an ng style type thing where we can calculate the left position based on the index or something like that. But um, but we could definitely put this in a for loop and then um, do what we need to do. And then actually, this is the perfect sort of example of where maybe we could have, if we had this thing set up where it had the left, then we could just read on the same, like the same index, um, what its position should be or something like that. But anyway, so we are moving in the direction that we need to move in. It is like sort of a slow ride, but it is basically highly focused on the individual steps to try to understand what needs to be done. This code, this does the same thing, but this code looks a lot different. There was a lot more stuff there were a lot more if thens down here. Now they're gone. Now we just have this here. It would be nice to clean this up to sort of think, okay, so how do I, like, I don't find this to be particularly understandable. It's nice. It is actually nice because you can kind of see everything. But I think it would be better if the animation one was like get uh, mesh for like get animation for and then pass it the alias and um, all things these as individual parameters or possibly the whole thing, or maybe even pass it the mesh and this animation um, and it just like it kind of would be nice if it's like we said okay like I think it might be a little bit more readable if it was like const animations. So what do I do here? Say I go through each mesh and I add this animation, but when I add multiple animations, yeah, I add them all independently. So right now there's like really no crud type thing. There's just adding. And it'd be nice if I could add or remove or whatever animations in a way that is sort of easy to understand. Um, and I don't know exactly how that is going to work now that I think about it. Um, almost seems like I should have like a pre-canned set of animations or something like that, but I don't know. The animations part of this is like definitely, to me, definitely in the last version of this application was by far the most complex part of the code that just sort of everything just kind of went sideways in there. It kind of ended up being sort of the poison pill that killed the whole thing. Um, and I think we're, at high risk of that again. Um, I definitely don't want to just sort of glibly come up with some sort of animation scheme. I think it is hard to visualize like what's happening to a to one of these things. I mean, it's pretty easy here, but it's hard to come up with a good way. Like, and what I'm thinking is like, how will I know to delete this or whatever? And I think you're just going to need a UI, really. I don't think there's a good way in code to really have a solid understanding of what's going on because it's just there's too many things. But anyways, yeah, this is a how far are we at 38 minutes? Pretty long. I think it was good though. I think we this moving into IDs is into an array is good. I think tomorrow I want to focus on making this like a for loop instead of that with some sort of clever way of determining what the left should be based on the for loop. So, and and it would be kind of cool, like even to be maybe a left and top, like so, like maybe um, it does some sort of calculation where, like, because all of these probably should be top is equal to 0, colon 0. I think that's fine. And then like if top was 100, yeah, so yeah, I think that would be cool. Like I think yeah, create for looping this and then having maybe a function that determines what the left and the top is based on the current index with the basic assumption that we want um, four rows and um, and maybe 4 columns, like, so, that it basically every time we get to a fifth one, then we get another one down here. And then, and it'd probably be kind of cool if like these were randomized. So, which way they're spinning and all that isn't is is random. Um, that even directions and all that. I think that might be cool having like a grid of 16 of these. I think once that is done, it probably would make good sense at that point to do a commit. Basically, um, do a yeah, do a commit at that point. And before we do commits, do unit tests, and then, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I think there might be a little bit of unit test work, and then do like end to end. I don't think there's any end to end changes, um, but I think that would be. I don't know. Then we'll have to think about what's next because it is a little blurry to me. Like, okay, what should we do after that? But anyways, happy coding, everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.